At my peaceful Adirondack cabin, I discovered my son and his wife celebrating what they thought was my imminent demise. They mocked me, called me toxic, and planned to burn my cherished family photos. I just listened, my heart shattering into a million pieces. They have no idea the storm they have awakened. You won't believe what happened next. Please like, share, and let us know where you are listening from. Evelyn, a woman of 63 years whose silver hair was often meticulously styled, but now lay disheveled from travel, sought refuge in her beloved Adirondack retirement cabin. The journey from Albany had been long, but she craved the quiet solitude, hoping to find peace and clarity. After a lifetime of what often felt like a series of unspoken disappointments and perceived betrayals, especially since the passing of her husband Richard, the cabin was her sanctuary, a place where the weight of the world usually lifted from her shoulders. As her aging sedan crunched onto the gravel driveway, a knot tightened in Evelyn's stomach. Fresh tire tracks marred the familiar path, too distinct to be her own. A faint but unmistakable bass thumped through the crisp autumn air. Loud music. Rock music. It wasn't the kind of sound one associated with the serene wilderness, or more importantly, with Evelyn's own tastes. She hadn't told anyone she was coming, preferring the spontaneous escape. Her mind immediately leaped to her son, Ethan, and his wife Brenda. It seemed unlikely, yet the possibility gnawed at her. She parked her car discreetly behind a cluster of pines, out of sight from the cabin's main windows. With a strange mix of apprehension and a building sense of irritation, Evelyn got out, the quiet crunch of her boots on the fallen leaves loud in the otherwise natural silence. She moved stealthily, her steps practiced from years of navigating the forest trails, approaching the cabin from the side. As she drew closer, the music grew louder, the laughter and chatter undeniable. It was a party, a celebration, in her cabin, without her. Peeking cautiously through the living room window, Evelyn's breath hitched. Inside, the cabin glowed with the warm light of her lamps, casting long shadows of familiar furniture. Ethan, her only son, stood by the stone fireplace, a beer bottle in hand, a wide, triumphant grin plastered across his face. Brenda, his wife, sat curled on Evelyn's favorite armchair, sipping from a wine glass, her laughter echoing too freely in Evelyn's private space. Several other unfamiliar figures mingled around, their voices a cacophony of careless merriment. Then, a phrase cutting through the music and chatter stopped Evelyn cold. Ethan's voice, clear and sharp with malice, reached her ears, finally free of the old controlling witch. The words struck Evelyn with the force of a physical blow. Her blood ran cold, her heart seizing in her chest. Controlling witch? Her mind reeled. Was this really her son, her own flesh and blood, speaking with such venom? Brenda, ever the eager participant, chimed in with a theatrical sigh. Oh, thank God, I was getting so exhausted from pretending. She was just so toxic. She gestured vaguely, her eyes rolling dramatically. Always trying to tell us how to live, how to spend, how to raise our children. Another voice, a woman Evelyn didn't recognize, chuckled. And her financial advice, seriously? After she screwed up one kid so badly after Richard's death. The casual cruelty of their words, the dismissive tone, painted a picture of Evelyn entirely alien to her own perception. She had only ever tried to help, to guide, to protect. After Richard's sudden passing years ago, she had felt a profound responsibility to ensure her children were secure, to offer the wisdom gained from a life lived, even if it had been imperfect. She had poured her heart, her energy, and often her limited finances into supporting Ethan and his sister. Now it seemed all her sacrifices were being twisted into manipulative ploys, her care into control. The sting of betrayal was a sharp, searing pain, far more intense than any she had known. Brenda, emboldened by the agreement, rose and began to wander around the room, her eyes raking over Evelyn's cherished possessions with a disdainful gaze. She picked up a framed photograph of Evelyn and Richard on their honeymoon, a rare, tender moment captured in time. Honestly, this cabin needs a complete overhaul, she declared, holding the photo by its corner as if it were contaminated. All these old, sentimental things, these photos, straight to the bonfire. Once we inherit this place, I'm redecorating from scratch. Modern, minimalist, something we actually like. Ethan nodded in agreement, a smug expression on his face. Exactly. Too sentimental about money, too sentimental about junk. We could easily rent this place out for a fortune. It's prime real estate. Imagine the income. He took another swig from his bottle, his eyes gleaming with a calculating avarice that made Evelyn's stomach churn. It was then that Evelyn fully grasped the sinister undercurrent of their conversation. This wasn't merely a private rant. This was a deliberate act of disrespect, a celebration of her imagined demise, happening in her own sanctuary. They were not just talking about what they would do, they were planning, plotting, actively anticipating her absence, her death, so they could claim what they believed was theirs. The cabin, her refuge, had become the stage for their callous intentions. As if to twist the knife further, Brenda ambled into the kitchen, opening Evelyn's refrigerator with casual ease. "Oh, good, she left us plenty of groceries," she remarked, pulling out a carton of eggs and a package of bacon. "Might as well enjoy it while we can. It will all be ours soon enough anyway." Her voice was light, untroubled, utterly devoid of any recognition of the profound hurt she was inflicting. Evelyn watched, frozen for a moment, then felt a strange, cold resolve settle over her. She retreated silently, every nerve ending screaming, every breath catching in her throat. She moved away from the window, melting back into the shadows of the woods as undetected as she had arrived. Her mind, usually so prone to emotional turmoil, was now racing with a chilling clarity. This wasn't just a misunderstanding, it was a calculated plot, a grand scheme to erase her presence and claim her legacy. Back in Albany, the memory of their cruel words and avaricious plans burned bright. The initial devastation gave way to a cold, hard determination. Evelyn knew with absolute certainty that she couldn't let this stand. They wanted her gone. They wanted her erased. She would show them. She would fight back. She would expose their true intentions, not just for the cabin, but for everything she had ever held dear. The old controlling witch, as they called her, was about to teach them a lesson they would never forget. Evelyn called in sick to her accounting job, her voice a hollow shell of its usual professional tone. The usual meticulous balance sheets and tax forms that occupied her days now seemed utterly trivial, a distant echo from a life that felt irrevocably altered. Her mind, once filled with numbers, now replayed Ethan and Brenda's cruel words on an endless loop. Controlling witch, toxic, screwed up one kid. The sting of their betrayal, the casual contempt, fueled a cold, unyielding resolve. She wouldn't just mourn, she would act. Her first move was to delve into the labyrinthine world of online electronics, dedicating hours to researching and ultimately ordering a complete hidden surveillance system. She needed proof, undeniable evidence to confront the monstrous truth that had taken root in her own home. A few days later, while awaiting the discreetly shipped package, Evelyn forced herself to make a call to Ethan. She needed to maintain the facade of normalcy to gauge his reaction. "Just checking in, dear," she began, her voice carefully modulated to sound maternal, not suspicious. "How was your weekend?" Ethan's voice, when it came, was laced with an irritation he barely bothered to conceal. "Fine, Mom. Just a quiet weekend at home, you know. Nothing exciting." His tone made it clear he viewed her call as an inconvenience, an interruption to his supposedly uneventful life. The lie was so blatant, so casual, that it solidified Evelyn's conviction. He didn't just want her gone, he actively despised her and felt entitled to deceive her. When the surveillance equipment drawer arrived, Evelyn plunged into the task with the same methodical precision she applied to her accounting ledgers. Days blurred into a focused blur of the unboxing, reading dense technical manuals, and patiently troubleshooting. The tiny lenses, the miniature transmitters, the intricate software, it was all alien to her, yet she mastered it, driven by a primal need for self-preservation. Each successful connection, each clear image on the monitor, felt like a small victory against the growing darkness that threatened to engulf her. Armed with her newfound technical prowess and a heart hardened by betrayal, Evelyn drove back to the Adirondacks. This journey was vastly different from her last. There was no hope for solace now, only a grim determination. As she approached her cabin, the sight of Ethan's truck and Brenda's smaller SUV parked brazenly in her driveway sent a fresh wave of ice through her veins. They were settled, truly settled, as if they owned the place already. She waited. Hidden amongst the dense pines, she watched, a ghost observing her own life. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, she saw Ethan and Brenda pile into their cars and drive away, presumably for supplies or to meet their co-conspirators. The moment they were out of sight, Evelyn crept from her hiding spot, her heart hammering against her ribs. She let herself into her own home, the key feeling heavy and alien in her hand. The interior of the cabin was a disarray that spoke volumes of their disrespect. Dirty dishes were piled in the sink, empty beer cans littered the coffee table, and discarded clothes lay draped over her cherished antique rocking chair. It was more than messy, it was violated. Her sanctuary had been desecrated. With a renewed sense of urgency, Evelyn began her search. On her writing desk, amidst a stack of old magazines, she found them. Real estate listings, printouts of property values for the Adirondack region, and most damningly, a half-completed draft of a power of attorney document, with her name prominently displayed as the principal. Her hands trembled as she read the legal jargon, the implications chilling her to the bone. This wasn't about simply inheriting the cabin after her death. This was about gaining control of her assets while she was still alive. They wanted to strip her of her agency, to manage her finances, her property, her very existence as if she were already incapable. The thought made her feel physically ill. Working quickly, Evelyn photographed every single document with her phone, ensuring every detail was captured. Then, with practiced stealth, she began installing her hidden cameras. One, disguised as a bookmark, slid into a thick, leather-bound novel on the bookshelf. Another, a tiny lens embedded in a smoke detector, replaced the existing one in the living room ceiling. A third, almost imperceptible, found its place within a decorative ceramic birdhouse hanging just outside the kitchen window, offering a view of the back entrance and a slice of the backyard. The most invasive yet necessary camera was carefully placed in a small, innocuous-looking alarm clock in her bedroom, angled to capture the entire room. As she moved through the cabin, her blood pressure rising with each discovery, she found more evidence of their audacious occupation. In her walk-in closet, Brenda's clothes hung alongside her own, a jarring intrusion of bright, modern fabrics next to Evelyn's more classic pieces. In the bathroom, Brenda's array of colorful toiletries sat on the vanity, displacing Evelyn's simple silver-capped bottles. They hadn't just visited, they had fully moved in, making themselves at home in her life. The most disturbing discovery, however, awaited her on Brenda's side of the bed, tucked beneath a stack of romance novels. It was a spiral-bound notebook, meticulously filled with Brenda's neat, cursive handwriting. Evelyn's heart hammered as she opened it. Inside, pages were filled with detailed calculations, spreadsheets charting Evelyn's bank accounts, investment portfolios, the value of Richard's life insurance policy, her pension, every single asset she possessed. Her entire net worth was laid bare, dissected, and analyzed by her daughter-in-law. And then, she found it. A single chilling entry, scrawled near the bottom of a page, stood out like a festering wound. Fred thinks we should wait for natural causes. Too long, need to explore other options. Evelyn gasped, a silent choke sound that echoed in the empty cabin. Fred, the name alone sent shivers down her spine. An accomplice, a legal advisor, and too long, need to explore other options. The words hung in the air, thick with a sinister implication that transcended mere greed. This wasn't just about inheriting or seizing control. This was a calculated plot to steal her life, to potentially hasten her demise. The horrifying depth of their intentions, the sheer, cold-blooded malice, was almost too much to bear. She photographed every single page of the notebook, her hands shaking, her breath coming in shallow gasps. This was no longer just about property. It was about her very existence. The beloved cabin, her quiet retreat, had transformed into a den of vipers. Just as she finished, a faint rumble echoed in the distance, the sound of an approaching engine. Ethan and Brenda were returning. Adrenaline surged through Evelyn's veins. She stuffed the notebook back under the novels, quickly tidied her tracks, and melted out of the back door, slipping back into the protective embrace of the woods just moments before their vehicles pulled into the driveway. Unseen, unheard, Evelyn retreated, leaving behind the silent watchers she had strategically placed, her mind reeling with a horrifying blend of fear and a newfound ice-cold resolve. Back in her Albany apartment, the familiar hum of the city outside Evelyn's window offered little comfort. Her fingers, usually nimble with a calculator, now hovered over a tablet screen, a portal into the very heart of her betrayal. With a deep, shuddering breath, she logged into the surveillance app. The tiny cameras she had meticulously placed in her Adirondack sanctuary flickered to life, offering clear, unobstructed views of her living room, kitchen, and bedroom. Her violated sanctuary, now laid bare before her eyes, was a chilling tableau. She watched, her heart a leaden weight in her chest, as Ethan and Brenda moved through her home, their casual occupancy a constant reminder of their audacity. They were living there full-time, treating it as their own, the daily rhythms of their lives unfolding on her screens. The conversations she overheard, amplified and crisped through the audio feed, began to paint a picture far more sinister than she had ever dared to imagine. One evening, as Ethan nursed a beer by the fireplace and Brenda sipped wine from Evelyn's best crystal, the true extent of their betrayal began to unravel. Brenda, her voice cool and calculating, spoke of a plan. "I've already contacted an elder law lawyer, a specialist in these kinds of cases," she announced, her eyes gleaming with a predatory light. "We're going to petition for your mother's guardianship." Evelyn felt a cold dread spread through her veins. Guardianship? The word itself was a legal cage designed to strip a person of their autonomy. Ethan, for a moment, seemed to flinch. "Guardianship? Brenda, are you serious? Mom she's not mentally unstable." His voice held a flicker of discomfort, a brief, fleeting moment of doubt that gave Evelyn a sliver of hope. But Brenda, ever the puppeteer, quickly quashed it. She leaned forward, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper, yet perfectly audible through the sensitive microphone hidden in the smoke detector. "Of course she is. Think about it, Ethan. Her isolation up here, her constant forgetfulness, those little repetitions she makes in conversation. Her age, it's all fodder. We just need to present it correctly. Signs of cognitive decline," the lawyer called them, "a pattern of behavior that shows she's no longer capable of managing her own affairs." She ticked off points on her fingers, her expression one of utter conviction. Evelyn felt a chill that transcended the physical. They were twisting her life, her habits, her very essence, into a narrative of incompetence. Her occasional memory lapses, her retreat to the cabin for peace, her natural aging, all were being weaponized against her. Then Brenda's voice dropped even lower, a sinister edge creeping into her tone. "And if she resists, if she fights back against the petition, well, we might need to give her something bigger to worry about." She paused, letting the words hang in the air, thick with unspoken threat. "A fall down the stairs, perhaps, or a gas leak, an accident that just makes her seem more fragile, more confused, unable to care for herself." Ethan's beer bottle clattered to the stone hearth, fortunately unbroken. "Jesus, Brenda, you can't be serious." His voice was laced with genuine horror, his face pale. It was a raw, visceral reaction that Evelyn clung to, a sign that perhaps a shred of humanity remained in her son. But Brenda merely waved away his concern with a dismissive flick of her wrist. "Don't be so dramatic, Ethan. I'm not talking about anything permanent, just something that would highlight her vulnerability. A series of unfortunate events that would underscore her need for our protection. The lawyer said it could strengthen our case immensely." She smiled, a cold, calculating curve of her lips that sent shivers down Evelyn's spine, even through the digital feed. Evelyn watched transfixed as Brenda began her insidious work of manipulation. "Think about it, Ethan," she purred, moving closer, laying a hand on his arm. "She controls every aspect of our lives, doesn't she? Always has. Her advice on your career, her suggestions for our finance, her constant concerns about our marriage. It's all just her way of playing the martyr, making us indebted to her. She wants to keep us small, reliant on her, just like she did after your father died." A faint tremor ran through Ethan. He looked away, his jaw tightening. "She did. She got very self-pitying after Dad passed, always talking about her sacrifices. Evelyn gasped silently, a hand flying to her mouth. Self-pity? Her grief, her raw, profound sorrow at losing Richard, the love of her life, was being reinterpreted as a manipulative tactic. Her endless efforts to hold the family together, to ensure her children were secure in the aftermath of their father's sudden death. All of it was being twisted into selfishness. To hear Ethan, her own son, nodding along to Brenda's poisonous narrative was a fresh wound, deeper than any she had yet sustained. Brenda, sensing his weakening resolve, pressed on. And remember how she always questioned our choices? How she couldn't stand to see you truly happy unless it was on her terms? She sees me as a threat because I help you stand on your own 2 feet, because I don't let her control us. She pulled him into an embrace, her words a soothing balm designed to solidify her insidious narrative. She wants to drag us down with her, Ethan, unless we take control first. Evelyn watched, her heart turning to ice. Her son, her only son, was being seduced by a narrative of her own villainy, blinded by greed and a twisted perception of reality. He was agreeing to strip her of everything, her dignity, her autonomy, her very life, all under the guise of freeing himself from her supposed control. It was no longer just about the cabin or her money. It was about her life. They weren't just waiting for her to déchoir, they were actively plotting to make her disappear, to render her a non-entity, to force her into a state of living death. Or worse, the casual mention of accidents confirmed it. Brenda was willing to resort to extreme measures, and Ethan, her son, was slowly being brought to heel, drawn into the dangerous plot. Evelyn knew then that she was fighting for her survival and that the game had just become deadly serious. The weather forecast crackled on Evelyn's television, a grim prediction that, to her, sounded like a symphony of opportunity. A historic blizzard, they warned, was hurtling towards the Adirondacks, promising heavy, relentless snow, whipping winds, and extreme cold that would plunge temperatures far below freezing. For anyone else, it would be a cause for alarm. For Evelyn, a cold smile touched her lips. Perfect timing, she whispered to the empty room. For 3 days, Evelyn had been a silent observer, monitoring Ethan and Brenda through the hidden eyes and ears of her surveillance system. She had watched them settle further into her cabin, their comfort morphing into an almost arrogant carelessness. Brenda had rearranged her antique furniture, shifting cherished pieces without a second thought. Ethan, with his usual lack of respect for personal space, had even brought up his clunky gaming console and a tower of video games, setting them up right in her living room, treating the cabin as if it were their permanent residence, a long-ago inherited legacy rather than a stolen moment. Their conversations, ever present in Evelyn's ears, continued to revolve around her. They were rehearsing their script, refining the narrative of her mental decline for the elder law lawyer. Brenda, always the director, coached Ethan meticulously. "Remember to mention her occasional repetitions, Ethan," she'd say, her voice calm and instructional, "and how she sometimes confuses dates. Nothing too obvious, just subtle hints that she's losing her grip." Ethan, now seemingly fully on board with Brenda's scheme, would nod, sometimes even contributing his own observations, trivial moments from their past twisted into ominous signs. They spoke of the upcoming guardianship hearing with an almost casual confidence, as if it were a mere formality before they could legally plunder her life savings. Then came the chilling discussion of Phase 2. Brenda, swirling her wine in Evelyn's crystal glass, outlined it with an unsettling nonchalance. "If the guardianship petition isn't enough, or if she somehow manages to put up a fight," Brenda began, her eyes glinting, "we'll need to escalate. A little fall, perhaps, maybe a bump on the head. Nothing fatal, of course," she quickly added, seeing Ethan's uneasy expression. "Just enough to render her visibly fragile, incapacitated, something that leaves no lasting damage but makes her seem utterly helpless, incapable of defending herself. The kind of thing that convinces a judge she needs full-time care, preferably under our supervision." Evelyn clenched her fists. She had heard enough, more than enough. The casual cruelty, the callous disregard for her well-being, the calculated steps towards her systematic erasure. It was all there, laid bare. She had gathered her evidence. Now it was time to turn the tables. It was time to unleash her own plan, a carefully orchestrated retribution. She began tracking the blizzard's progress with an obsessive focus, cross-referencing weather reports from multiple sources, mapping its projected path and intensity. Every hour, she checked the wind speeds, the expected snowfall, the plummeting temperatures. Her timing had to be precise, flawless. With her plan solidifying, Evelyn packed a small bag of essentials, warm clothing, a few days' worth of non-perishable food, and a fully charged power bank for her devices. She then drove, not back to the cabin, but to a small, nondescript motel 30 miles away, just beyond the expected heaviest snowfall, yet close enough to maintain her remote control and observation. It was a strategic retreat, ensuring her safety while allowing her to remain a silent, unseen architect of the unfolding drama. By Saturday afternoon, the first delicate snowflakes began to fall, swirling gently against the motel room window. Through her surveillance feed, Evelyn watched Ethan and Brenda, oblivious to the gathering storm, engrossed in a board game, their laughter echoing falsely in her cabin. They had stocked up on some groceries, but Evelyn knew it was a limited supply, barely enough for a few days, certainly not for a prolonged siege. They were unprepared, careless, and about to discover the true meaning of isolation. As the evening wore on, the snow intensified, falling in thick, relentless sheets. The wind howled, rattling the cabin windows, and the world outside began to transform into a white, swirling vortex. Inside, Ethan grew visibly uneasy. "Brenda, this is getting serious," he said, peering out the window. "The roads are going to be impassable soon. Maybe we should just pack up and head back to Albany while we still can." Brenda, however, remained dismissive, her confidence born of ignorance. "Nonsense, Ethan. We have four-wheel drive. And besides, it's cozy in here. This is an adventure. Think of it as a forced vacation. Just us." She failed to grasp the true nature of the Adirondack winter, especially not the particular challenges of the long, winding, and unmaintained access road leading to Evelyn's cabin, a detail Evelyn, the seasoned local, knew all too well. It was a private road, not regularly plowed, and notoriously treacherous in heavy snow. By 8 p.m., the blizzard raged with full fury. Through the cameras, Evelyn watched as Ethan, prompted by the cabin's sudden chill, a subtle temperature drop Evelyn had initiated remotely, went to check the front door. He struggled to open it, then pushed harder, only to find it completely blocked. "Brenda, there's a 3-foot snowdrift already," he exclaimed, his voice tinged with alarm. "We're completely snowed in." Panic began to creep into Brenda's eyes, but she quickly masked it. "Don't be dramatic. We'll just dig the car out." They bundled up, pulling on heavy coats and hats, and ventured outside into the raging whiteout. Evelyn watched them through the outdoor birdhouse camera, two small figures battling against the furious elements. Their attempts were futile. The camera showed them digging frantically, only to discover their SUV was completely buried, a white mound barely distinguishable from the surrounding drifts. Their predicament was confirmed. They were trapped. A grim satisfaction settled over Evelyn. Now her turn. From her motel room, she activated the next phase of her plan. With a few taps on her tablet, she remotely lowered the cabin's smart thermostat, sending the temperature steadily plummeting. Then, she prepared to control the electricity, ready to plunge them into darkness at a moment of her choosing. The game had truly begun. If you're finding this story as gripping as I hope, please do me a favor. Like this video, share it with someone who loves a good drama, and subscribe to make sure you don't miss a single twist. We're just getting started, and trust me, it only gets wilder from here. From the cozy warmth of her motel room, Evelyn watched, a silent conductor orchestrating a symphony of escalating discomfort. The first notes of her calculated campaign had already begun to play. She allowed the cabin's smart thermostat, now firmly under her remote control, to slowly, subtly lower the temperature. It wasn't a sudden plunge into Arctic cold, but a gradual, insidious creep downwards. Ethan and Brenda, oblivious to the unseen hand manipulating their environment, began to shiver. "It's really starting to get cold in here," Ethan grumbled, rubbing his arms. They bundled up in extra layers, piling blankets onto the sofa, and were soon forced to rely on the crackling fireplace as their primary source of warmth. They tried to adjust the thermostat, pushing buttons, muttering curses, but of course nothing happened. Must be the storm messing with the fancy system, Brenda declared, frustrated, completely unaware that the malfunction was Evelyn's deliberate handiwork. Around midnight, Evelyn pressed another button on her tablet. The kitchen lights flickered once, then plunged into darkness. The hum of the refrigerator ceased. The microwave's digital clock vanished. The electric stove, cold and inert, became another useless appliance. "What the hell?" Ethan exclaimed, his voice laced with annoyance and a growing hint of fear. "The power's out. This is a nightmare." Brenda, however, was still trying to rationalize. "It's just the kitchen, Ethan. The living room lights are still on. It's probably a surge or some localized storm damage affecting certain circuits." She walked over to the kitchen entrance, peering into the gloom, her face a mask of mild irritation rather than full-blown panic. She had no concept of Evelyn's remote control, no inkling that specific sections of the cabin were being selectively disabled. Evelyn allowed them to stew in the cold and confusion for several hours, listening to their increasingly frustrated sighs and comments. She watched them huddle closer by the fire, their shadows dancing on the walls, a visual testament to their diminishing comfort. Then, at precisely 3:00 a.m., with the blizzard still raging outside, Evelyn initiated the next phase. With another tap, she cut power to the well pump. By morning, the pipes would be dry, the toilets unflushable, the taps barren. No running water. Sunday dawned, a brutal gray tableau of white. The blizzard showed no signs of abating, and the cabin was now an icebox. Ethan and Brenda awoke to a new reality. No water. The first groggy attempts to brew coffee, to use the toilet, met with frustrating failure. "No water now?" Ethan cried, throwing his hands up in exasperation. "First the heat, then the kitchen, now this? What else can go wrong?" Brenda, her own temper fraying, just stared blankly at the dry faucet. "We'll have to melt snow," she finally declared, her voice tight. They bundled up again, venturing out into the raging storm to collect buckets of pristine white snow, hauling them back inside to melt over the dwindling fire. It was slow, laborious work, each drop of melted water a precious commodity. Evelyn, watching their every move, noted their growing exhaustion, their once vibrant confidence slowly eroding under the relentless pressure. This, she knew, was the real test of their partnership. By Sunday afternoon, their resources were dwindling rapidly. The fire crackled weakly, fed by the last of the split logs. The limited groceries without refrigeration were beginning to spoil. The lack of proper sanitation and the constant chill were taking their toll. The united front they had presented during their initial celebration, and even during their earlier plotting, began to crack under the relentless stress. Brenda, her face pale and drawn, snapped first. "This is your fault, Ethan," she accused, her voice sharp with anger. "I told you we should have left yesterday when the snow started. You were too busy playing video games." Ethan, equally frayed, retorted, "My fault. You were the one who wanted to enjoy the storm. You said we had four-wheel drive, and it would be an adventure. You were so confident." Their voices rose, sharp and acrimonious, filling the cabin with a tension that Evelyn could almost feel through the screen. "This crappy cabin," Brenda railed, throwing her hands up. "What kind of place doesn't have a backup generator? Your mother is so cheap." Evelyn watched with grim satisfaction as their true colors, stripped of their veneer of civility and ambition, emerged under pressure. This was the real Ethan, the real Brenda, revealed in the crucible of their self-inflicted misery. Brenda's anger spiraled, her viciousness finding a new target, Ethan's character. "You're so weak, Ethan. Always have been. Your mother was right about you." Ethan, stung by the insult, looked genuinely hurt. He weakly attempted to defend the woman they had so recently conspired against. She cares about me." His voice was barely a whisper, a desperate plea for recognition. But Brenda was relentless. "Cares about you? She controls you, Ethan. She always has. She's a lonely, bitter old woman who can't stand to see anyone happy, especially not you. She just wants to drag you down to her miserable level." Her words hung in the cold air, poisonous and accusatory, designed to dismantle any lingering affection Ethan might have for his mother, to fully cement his allegiance to her. Ethan, defeated by the chilling cold and Brenda's relentless verbal assault, slumped further into the armchair, pulling the threadbare blanket tighter around him. The storm outside raged, a relentless white roar, mirroring the tempest brewing inside the cabin. He looked at Brenda, his face etched with exhaustion and a dawning, terrible understanding. "Maybe you're right," he muttered, his voice hoarse. "Maybe she is like that, but you're still a heartless bitch." The words, though quietly spoken, resonated with a raw, desperate anger. Brenda's face, already pale from the cold and stress, turned a stark white with rage. Her eyes, usually so calculating, now blazed with a fierce, uncontrolled fury. "What did you call me?" she demanded, her voice a low, dangerous hiss. She took a step towards him, her fists clenching. "Do you want me to remind you of a few things, Ethan?" Ethan surprisingly held his ground. Perhaps it was the biting cold, the hunger, or the realization of the monstrous trap they were in, but a flicker of defiance ignited within him. "You heard me," he repeated, his voice gaining a touch of strength. "A heartless bitch." Brenda's fury intensified, boiling over. "Oh, you want to go there? Fine. Let's go there. Who was it exactly who came up with this whole brilliant plan to get your mother's money? Who did all the research? Who spent hours on the phone with lawyers, making all the arrangements? While you," she spat, "were too busy feeling guilty and weak, playing the dutiful son." She pointed a trembling finger at him. "Who's going to make us rich, Ethan, while you're too much of a coward to do what needs to be done?" The accusation hit Ethan like a physical blow. His expression, previously defiant, shifted. A realization, slow and painful, dawned across his face. He looked at Brenda with new eyes, seeing not just his ambitious wife, but the true cold-blooded orchestrator of their malicious scheme. You did come up with the plan," he conceded, his voice barely audible, a profound weariness settling over him. He ran a hand through his disheveled hair. "But I never wanted to. I never wanted to actually hurt her." Brenda scoffed, a harsh, humorless sound that echoed in the cold cabin. "Hurt her? We're already committed, Ethan. There's no turning back now. Besides," she continued, her voice dropping to a chilling whisper, "if she refuses to sign the papers, if she fights the guardianship, then the accident plan becomes very real. A fall down the stairs, a bump on the head, just enough to make sure she's unable to refuse, unable to stop us." Ethan's face went utterly pale. The casual mention of accident from before had been abstract, a vague threat. Now hearing it articulated with such cold precision, seeing the glint in Brenda's eye, the reality of the danger Evelyn was in, the kind of monster he had married, slammed into him with full force. He recoiled, suddenly seeing his wife not as his partner in a greedy venture, but as a ruthless predator, fully prepared to cross lines he had only vaguely contemplated. The man Evelyn had watched on her surveillance feed, initially complicit, now looked genuinely horrified. From her motel room, Evelyn watched his reaction with a grim satisfaction. The blizzard outside, furious and unforgiving, was nothing compared to the tempest she was about to unleash on their lives. The seeds of discord she had sown were beginning to bear bitter fruit. By Monday morning, after 2 full days trapped in the increasingly frigid and deprived cabin, Ethan and Brenda interacted like hostile strangers. Their conversation was limited to clipped, sarcastic remarks, punctuated by long, resentful silences. The initial burst of their argument had subsided, replaced by a cold, simmering resentment. Evelyn, sensing the perfect moment, initiated the next stage of her carefully calculated misery. With another tap on her tablet, she cut power to almost the entire cabin. The remaining lights flickered and died, plunging the living room into near darkness, save for the dying embers in the fireplace. Only one single obscure outlet in the corner of the living room remained active, enough to power her cameras, but little else. The well pump remained off, the kitchen dead. The temperature inside continued its slow, inexorable descent. "Are you kidding me?" Brenda shrieked, her voice echoing in the sudden gloom. "Now the lights are out. This is unbearable. This cabin is a piece of junk." What was her glorious retirement dream anyway? To freeze to death in a shithole? Ethan, hunched over, shivering, barely registered her complaints. The cold had seeped into his bones, and Brenda's callous remarks about his mother's home, coupled with the stark realization of her true intentions, seemed to stir something within him. He looked utterly defeated, a shadow of the man who had celebrated his mother's perceived demise just days ago. He stared into the flickering firelight, his voice low, barely audible. Maybe we should just wait for her to die naturally. It was a weak protest, a desperate plea for a return to some semblance of morality, but it was there. The cracks in his resolve were widening, the monster Brenda had tried to create now recoiling from its own reflection. Brenda's eyes narrowed to furious slits, her face contorted with a venomous rage. Ethan's suggestion, his meek plea for a more natural course of events, had ignited a fresh spark of fury within her. "Cold feet, Ethan? Are you serious?" she snarled, slamming a can of lukewarm soup onto the table with a resounding thud. The pathetic sound echoed in the frigid, mostly dark cabin. "After all we've done, all we've planned, you're backing out. You're such a coward." She stalked towards him, her voice escalating with each word. "She's a controlling, manipulative parent who made you feel guilty for simply breathing. She used every single sacrifice as a leash to keep you tied to her, a constant reminder of how much you owed her." Ethan, shivering and defeated, tried to push back. "But she did sacrifice a lot after Dad died," he murmured, clinging to the fading memories of his mother's love, of the comfort and support she had offered him in the darkest hours. "She worked so hard. She always said she loved us." Brenda scoffed, a cruel cutting sound. "Oh, she loved you? Or did she use those sacrifices as a weapon? A constant tally to ensure you never, ever forgot how much she gave up for you, to make you feel forever indebted?" Evelyn, watching from her motel room, felt a profound, agonizing pain. To hear her deepest love, her most selfless acts, twisted into such a perverse form of manipulation, was almost unbearable. Her heart ached for the son who now heard only poison, oblivious to the years of devotion. Then, Brenda delivered the ultimate blow, a bombshell that detonated in the cold, tense air of the cabin. "And you want to know the biggest secret of all, Ethan? The one that explains everything? Your mother isn't even your biological mother." Ethan froze, his eyes wide with disbelief, his jaw dropping open. "What? No, that's a lie! You're lying!" He stumbled to his feet, a flicker of genuine shock and anger piercing through his apathy. Brenda, however, was prepared. With a triumphant sneer, she pulled a crumpled envelope from her pocket. "Am I? Let's see. Here are Evelyn's old medical records, including yours. And here are Richard's military deployment dates from that period." She spread them on the small table, pointing to dates, numbers, and names. "Look at them, Ethan. Richard was deployed overseas for over 18 months, a full 2 years before you were born. Do the math, darling. He couldn't possibly be your father." Evelyn, watching the screen, felt her world tilt. The carefully guarded secret, buried for decades, was now exposed, ripped open and laid bare for her son to see. The truth was there, undeniable. It was true. Her past affair with Richard's best friend, Arthur, a fleeting moment of weakness during a difficult time, had resulted in Ethan. Richard had accepted it, loved Ethan as his own, and they had vowed to carry the secret to their graves. Now Brenda had unearthed it, weaponizing it with devastating precision. Brenda continued, her voice dripping with malicious satisfaction. "So all that single mother act, all those sacrifices after Richard died? It was all a cover-up for her own adultery. You, Ethan, are the living evidence of her betrayal. The secret she carried, the lie she built her entire life around." Ethan collapsed back into the armchair, burying his head in his hands, his body racked with deep, gut-wrenching sobs. His world, built on a lifetime of assumptions, shattered into a million pieces around him. Brenda leaned over him, her voice a cruel balm, explaining how Evelyn's controlling nature wasn't about love, but about fear. Fear that her monstrous secret would be exposed. Fear that her carefully constructed life would unravel. He learned then, through Brenda's venomous narrative, that she had known this secret for 6 agonizing months. 6 months she had held it, polished it, waiting for the right moment to unleash it as her ultimate weapon. "She destroyed your family, Ethan, before you were even born," Brenda hammered home, solidifying his resentment, twisting the knife deeper into his already fractured psyche. She lied to you. She lied to Richard. She lied to everyone. Her perfect mother act? It was all a front, a desperate attempt to cover her own tracks. Ethan lifted his head, his eyes red-rimmed and hardened, not with grief, but with a terrifying, cold anger. The man Evelyn saw on the screen was no longer her son, but a stranger filled with a bitter, new resentment. "She's a liar," he choked out, his voice raw. "A fraud. Everything she ever taught me, everything she ever said, was a lie." Brenda smiled, a triumphant, chilling smile. She had done it. She had fully turned him against his mother, armed him with a betrayal so profound that it eclipsed all others. Then, as a final masterful stroke of manipulation, she planted a horrifying new seed of guilt. "And you know," she mused, her voice casual, "all the financial pressure she put on herself, raising you alone, secretly, constantly worried about money, it probably contributed to Richard's early death, didn't it? All that stress. She killed him, Ethan." Slowly but surely. Ethan stared at her, his face a mask of dawning horror, the implications settling over him with nauseating weight. He, Evelyn's secret, was now being blamed for Richard's death. The web of betrayal, manipulation, and lies had just become irrevocably tangled. Brenda, her eyes gleaming with a triumph born of malice, saw the transformation in Ethan. His initial horror at her revelations had hardened into a cold, bitter resolve. This was her moment. "See," she pressed, her voice a seductive whisper. "Taking Evelyn's assets isn't theft, Ethan. It's compensation. Compensation for all the lies, for all the years she stole from you, for the truth she kept hidden. It's what you're owed." Ethan looked at her, and the man Evelyn had known, the son she had raised, was gone. In his place was a harder, colder man, his face a mask of profound resentment and betrayal. He nodded slowly, his voice flat, devoid of emotion. "You're right. She deserves whatever she gets. I'll do whatever it takes to collect." Evelyn, watching the chilling exchange unfold on her screen, felt a knot of dread twist in her stomach. Brenda had truly weaponized her most painful secret, twisting it into a justification for any harm they might inflict. It was a complete psychological coup, ensuring Ethan would participate wholeheartedly in the final, brutal phase of their plan. Tuesday morning dawned, a stark white landscape still blanketed in deep snow. But through the biting wind, a new sound reached the cabin, the distant, powerful roar of snowplows. The mountain road was being cleared. Hope, a dangerous and fleeting thing, surged through Ethan and Brenda. They were almost free. For the past 3 days, while Ethan and Brenda battled the elements in each other, Evelyn had been meticulously building her case. Every venomous word, every sinister plot, every detail of their conspiracy had been captured by her hidden cameras. She had diligently downloaded, organized, and cross-referenced the video and audio files. She had concrete proof of the forged power of attorney documents, the detailed financial research into her assets, and the chilling discussions about declaring her mentally incompetent. Most damning of all, she had their explicit conversations about causing her physical harm, a criminal conspiracy laid bare in their own voices. At precisely 9:30 a.m., Evelyn made the call she had been planning, the one that would forever change her life and theirs. She dialed the state police, her voice calm and steady, despite the hurricane of emotions swirling within her. "I'd like to report a break-in and attempted fraud at my cabin in the Adirondacks," she began. "My son, Ethan, and my daughter-in-law, Brenda, have illegally occupied my property and are actively conspiring to steal my assets." She detailed their illegal occupation, their calculated plans to seize her finances, and the insidious methods they intended to use. Evelyn emphasized the chilling discussions of causing me physical harm, highlighting the grave criminal nature of their conspiracy. She spoke for almost an hour, laying out the entire horrifying saga with a precision that only a trained accountant could muster. The officer on the other end listened in stunned silence. Within minutes, Evelyn was connected to Sheriff Eleanor Vance, a woman known for her sharp mind and unwavering commitment to justice. Evelyn sent over copies of all her recordings, the photographs of Brenda's notebook, the forged documents, and the time-stamped video evidence. Sheriff Vance reviewed the evidence with a growing sense of astonishment. Mrs. Miller, she finally said, her voice heavy with disbelief, this is, this is one of the most comprehensive cases of elder abuse and conspiracy I've ever encountered. The level of premeditation, the sheer malice, it's truly disturbing. Evelyn took a deep breath, the decision she had wrestled with for days now firm and resolute. She thought of Richard, of his unwavering love, of the life they had built. She thought of the little boy Ethan had once been, before greed had poisoned him. And then, she thought of the monster Brenda had become, and the monster she had shaped Ethan into. Sheriff, Evelyn said, her voice clear and unwavering, I want to press full charges against both of them. Every single charge. A caravan of police vehicles, including an ambulance, lights flashing silently through the pristine snow, slowly made its way up the now cleared mountain road. Evelyn, riding in the passenger seat of Sheriff Vance's patrol car, watched the familiar landscape unfold. Through her phone app, she saw Ethan and Brenda inside the cabin. Panic had set in. They had finally discovered some of the tiny cameras, realizing their every move had been watched. They were frantically packing, shoving clothes into duffel bags, their faces etched with fear. They knew. As the police cars pulled into the driveway, their tires crunching on the packed snow, Ethan and Brenda emerged from the cabin, eyes wide with a mixture of confusion and dawning horror. They scanned the approaching vehicles, then their eyes landed on the figure stepping out of the front passenger side of the sheriff's vehicle. Evelyn. Their faces drained of all color, the blood visibly retreating from their features, leaving them ashen. The realization hit them like a physical blow. Their controlling witch wasn't frail, wasn't demented, and certainly wasn't dead. She was standing right there, fully aware, fully in control. Sheriff Vance stepped forward, her voice cutting through the silent, frozen air. Ethan Miller, Brenda Miller, you are under arrest. She read their rights, her words echoing crisply. You have active warrants for conspiracy to commit fraud, elder abuse, and criminal trespass, among other charges. The handcuffs clicked, harsh metallic sounds in the profound silence of the snow-covered Adirondacks. Ethan emerged from the cabin first, hands raised in a gesture of surrender, his face pale with a mixture of shock and abject fear. Brenda followed, her usually composed demeanor completely shattered, her eyes wide with frantic desperation. The biting cold seemed to have stripped away their arrogance, leaving them exposed and vulnerable. As officers approached with handcuffs, Brenda's composure finally broke. You set us up, she shrieked at Evelyn, her voice raw with rage and betrayal. You crazy old witch. Evelyn remained calm, her gaze steady, unwavering. She simply held up her phone, displaying the recording icon, the silent proof of their treachery. Sheriff Vance, standing beside Evelyn, confirmed the charges, her voice firm. We have ample evidence, Mrs. Miller. And for you, Ethan, we're adding conspiracy to commit assault based on the recordings. The metallic click of the handcuffs echoed through the still air as they were placed on Ethan's wrists. Mom, please, he pleaded, his voice cracking, tears welling in his eyes. This is all a misunderstanding. Brenda made me do it. Evelyn stepped forward, confronting him directly, her voice imbued with a quiet power. A misunderstanding, Ethan. You plan to declare me mentally incompetent. You spoke of causing an accident to ensure I couldn't resist. You planned to steal my cabin, my life savings, everything I worked for. Her gaze hardened. I heard every cruel word you and Brenda spoke, celebrating my supposed death, twisting my love into manipulation, my grief into selfishness. Brenda, now cuffed to herself, exploded again. You were spying on us. You illegally recorded us. This is inadmissible. Sheriff Vance stepped in, her authority undeniable. Mrs. Miller is the owner of this property. Property owners have every right to monitor their own premises. And what we have on these recordings, Mrs. Miller, is more than enough. Evelyn turned her attention back to Brenda. I was simply protecting myself from people who wanted to steal my life's work and possibly cause me physical harm. Then her eyes met Ethan's, filled with a profound sorrow, but also a steely resolve. Brenda didn't make you think anything, Ethan. She showed you who you really are. As they were led towards the waiting patrol cars, Brenda's voice, now hoarse, carried on the wind. You're a vindictive old witch, Evelyn. You destroyed your own family. Evelyn's reply was calm, clear, and utterly devoid of emotion. No, I am free. I protected myself. It's called self-preservation. Before they drove away, Sheriff Vance turned to Evelyn, a flicker of concern in her eyes. Are you absolutely sure about pressing full charges, Mrs. Miller? This could mean significant jail time for your son. Evelyn looked at her son, now a crumpled figure being guided into the back of a police cruiser. The boy she had raised was gone, replaced by a man consumed by greed and lies. He chose his path, Sheriff, she stated, her voice steady. Those choices have consequences. In the weeks and months that followed, Evelyn slowly, deliberately began to reclaim her life. The cabin, her cherished sanctuary, once tainted by betrayal, became a symbol of her rebirth. She moved into it full-time, the quiet solitude no longer a refuge from sadness, but a canvas for new beginnings. A spare room once cluttered with old boxes was transformed into a bright, airy art studio. Here, surrounded by the natural beauty of the Adirondacks, Evelyn discovered a latent talent for watercolor painting, her brushstrokes flowing with a freedom she hadn't known in years. She updated her will, meticulously ensuring that not a single penny would ever go to Ethan or Brenda. Instead, her entire estate was bequeathed to a charity dedicated to protecting victims of elder abuse, a silent testament to her unwavering commitment to justice and her newfound purpose. A deep-seated curiosity, awakened by Brenda's cruel revelation, led Evelyn to locate Arthur, Ethan's biological father. They spoke over the phone, a cautious, emotional conversation bridging decades of silence. Arthur, now a widower living a quiet life, listened in stunned silence as Evelyn recounted Ethan's actions. After a moment of profound reflection, he sadly declined to meet Ethan, stating, "He may be my biological son, Evelyn, but his actions are not of my making. I cannot condone such cruelty." Evelyn understood, the final loose end of that painful secret now tied. Evelyn learned to embrace solitude, finding a profound liberation in her first Christmas alone in 40 years. It wasn't lonely, it was peaceful, a quiet celebration of self-reliance and freedom. She joined a local hiking group for women over 50, forming authentic friendships based on shared experiences and genuine choice, not the binding obligations of family. Her cabin, once quiet, soon echoed with the happy barks of Sunny, a golden retriever she'd adopted from a local shelter. Sunny, with her boundless affection and unwavering loyalty, taught Evelyn to trust again, to open her heart to simple, unconditional love. Several months later, a letter arrived, penned in Ethan's familiar, if now shaky, handwriting. He was in jail, facing a long sentence, and his words expressed a profound remorse, a recognition of her past sacrifices and a dawning understanding of Brenda's manipulation. He begged for forgiveness, for a chance to rebuild. Evelyn read the letter, her heart aching, but she felt no hatred, only a quiet acceptance. She knew she had to forgive him, not for his sake, but for her own peace, but she also knew she couldn't be part of his journey back. She wrote a short, clear reply. "I forgive you for my own peace, Ethan, but I won't be part of that journey." She signed it simply Evelyn, omitting Mom. She finally belonged completely to herself. One evening, sitting on her porch, watching the sunset paint the Adirondack sky in hues of orange and purple, Evelyn raised a glass of wine. "To freedom," she whispered, a gentle smile gracing her lips. In her reclaimed sanctuary, surrounded by the quiet beauty of the mountains, she found perfect peace, truly living for herself, guided by her own unwavering spirit.